the same wiring. So if we've been around for 300,000 plus years at least,
some sort of civilization here before this flood took place, that they built this with advanced technology.
Around 1914, a Dutch explorer was lured by tales of an ancient ruler and his kingdom to Indonesia. It was there an outsider first discovered one of the largest pyramids in the world, buried deep within the Indonesian jungles. Ever since this chance discovery, arguments and conversations in the archaeology and geology industry have risen. And with the answers we have seen so far, it can change everything we know about history. What exactly is this mystery pyramid?
That can make something like this, it is very needs advanced technology.
To the rest of the world, the Indonesian pyramid is a marvel and something that would take years of studying to truly understand. But to the Indonesians, this pyramid is called the Gunung Padang and has been with them for centuries.
If this place truly is man-made and this really is a step pyramid.
They spend some days performing rituals and praying at the pyramids as they believe it has some sort of connection to their ancestors. Gunung Padang is an archaeological site located in Karyamukti, West Java, Indonesia. It is 50 kilometers southwest of Cianjur, sitting 885 meters above sea level.
Sea levels were as much as 300 plus feet lower than they are today.
On first look at this site, it looks like a regular hill, but when you look deeper, you find out that it is covering an extinct volcano. The pyramid consists of a series of 5 terraces that are bordered by retaining walls of stone that are accessed by 370 successive andesite steps rising about 95 meters. These andesite blocks are called columnar joints. These joints are formed by the cooling of lava flow. The hexagonal pattern of the blocks arise because contractional stress is most efficient by 3 fractures that intersect at angles of 120 degrees, which then creates 6-sided polygons.
Columnar basalt can form in almost perfect hexagonal chunks.
Columns are then oriented perpendicular to the main cooling surfaces of lava flows and other igneous bodies. The columnar jointing then forms after a lava flow or other igneous body has solidified, but it can only form when the lava is still at a high or medium temperature. Places like the Devil's Tower in Wyoming and the Columbia River flood basalts were formed through columnar jointing.
You can also find columns like this Devil's Tower in Wyoming.
Since the Gunung Padang is covering a volcano, it is no surprise that it is covered with massive columnar joints. However, different indigenous people have different beliefs of how the stones got to the location it is today. According to the Sundanese people, who are native to the area, the site was a result of King Silwangi's attempt to build a palace in one night. Obviously, it was a failure, and there is not much evidence to prove if that is true or not, but it is an interesting story. The Gunung Padang consists of a series of 5 artificial terraces, 1 rectangular and 4 trapezoidal, that occur 1 through 5 at successively higher elevations. So the more elevated the terraces, the smaller they became, with the first terrace as the lowest and largest, and the 5th terrace being the highest and smallest. Maybe the stories told by the Sundanese people aren't entirely provable.
Here at the first terrace now, the hike only took us about 5-10 minutes to get up.
But the arrangement of the terraces says something about how the hexagonal blocks got to their current locations. The terraces lie along a central longitudinal northwest to southeast axis. They are artificial platforms created by lowering high spots and filling in low spots with fill until a flat surface is achieved. It means that the volcanic stones were manually placed in their current locations, which has now formed a pyramid that is highly regarded by the indigenous people in the area. So, what exactly is the legend of the Gunung Padang, and why is it highly regarded as a place of worship. Legend of the Gunung Padang. According to the Sundanese people, native to the location of the Gunung Padang, there are at least 5 different legends about how it came to be, but everything connects to one person, King Siliwangi. King Siliwangi is a semi-mythical creature in the sense that he may have existed at some point, but the things that his people claimed that he had done were not plausible. It is also hard to identify who exactly King Siliwangi was, as any king of Sunda is always referred to by the name. According to the legends, King Siliwangi ordered the construction of the Gunung Padang as a sacred place of worship or a powerful spiritual site. He wanted a place to be able to converse with the gods they worshipped, and through his mystical powers, he moved the large hexagonal stones into the position he wanted. It is believed that he constructed everything in a single night through the help of spirits called jinns or other ethereal helpers. In some other interpretations of the same story, King Siliwangi built the Gunung Padang as a monumental offering to the gods or as a means of channeling spiritual energy. This interpretation boasts of Siliwangi's leadership and ability to bridge the human and divine realms. The king is depicted as a custodian of Sundanese culture and spirituality, so his connection to the site elevates the spirituality of the site. But in all these, King Siliwangi's connection to the Gunung Padang suggests that it wasn't just a spiritual site, but also a symbol of the unification of the Sundanese people under his rule. But those are not the only ideas surrounding the creation of the Gunung Padang. Some believe that each stone in the Gunung Padang represents different parts of life, the cosmos, and the human connection to nature and the divine realm. Some other stories claim that the Gunung Padang is a portal to other realms, as it is believed that King Siliwangi disappeared into one of these realms and left his mortal body behind, but continues to look over the Sundanese people. In Indonesian folklore, there is a recurrent theme of parallel kingdoms, and the Gunung Padang is sometimes linked to this phenomenon. They believe people can go to this site and make contact with the spirit world, almost like something you would see in a fantasy movie. Whether it is true or not is something that is left to you to decide. However, visitors and tourists have claimed that they felt some sense of ease and calmness with the presence of otherworldly entities in the area.
To visit this site, the name of the site is Gunung Padang.
These stories have been disregarded as fiction, but the locals hold on to these beliefs because it ensures they remain connected to the site no matter what. But amidst all these archaeologists and geologists seem to have gotten into a disagreement about the origin of the Gunung Padang.
The architecture here is all formed by columnar andesitic basaltic rock.
The truth. According to archaeologists, for the longest time, archaeologists ignored the Gunung Padang. The site's modern history can be traced back to the early 19th century, when Dutch settlers first became aware of the mighty pyramid just 4 hours south of Jakarta, close to the village of Karyamukti. Based on the writings of Dutch historian Rogier Verbeek in 1891, he wrote, "On the mountaintop, Gunung Padang, near Gunung Melati, a succession of 4 terraces, connected by steps of rough stone, paved with rough flat stones, and decorated with numerous sharp and columnar upright andesite stones. On each terrace, a small mound, probably a grave, is surrounded and covered with stones and topped with 2 pointed stones." Locals have known this site before the Dutch East India Company brought slavery and colonialism to West Java, and they referred to the site as the Mountain of Enlightenment. Till this day, locals still perform mystical ceremonies at the site, praying with the freshwater spring at the base. As mentioned earlier, archaeologists mostly ignored this place, but it was brought to their attention again in 1979 when a group of farmers rediscovered it. In 2023, a group of archaeologists dropped a study that claimed that the Gunung Padang is a multi-layered prehistoric pyramid dating back thousands of years BCE, predating Egypt's oldest pyramid. In essence, the researchers were saying that the Gunung Padang is older than the pyramids in Egypt, but that conclusion was placed under scrutiny by several other archaeologists. The initial research was headed by Indonesian geologist Danny Hilman Natawijaja, and it was published in the Archaeological Prospection. He and his team asserted that the megalithic site of Gunung Padang, which consists of 5 terraces, was built as a pyramid as far back as 27,000 years ago. But current estimates date the site to 5000 BCE at the earliest, which is a direct contradiction of David Hillman's claims. The team arrived at their findings by conducting ground penetration radar surveys and radiocarbon dating, among many other studies. One of the major reasons many researchers fought against David Hillman's conclusion is because dating the site as far back as 27,000 years ago completely upends everything we know about the Paleolithic era, during which hunter-gatherers lived in basic huts and wielded crude stone tools. According to research, the Paleolithic era was when older forms of humans like the Australopithecus, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and later Homo sapiens existed. It was during this era that humans evolved to bipedalism, and our brain size changed. Stone tools were what we used to survive during this era, and we relied on hunting and fishing to survive. We expressed creativity through cave paintings, and it was an important part of our evolutionary story as human beings. But if David Hillman and his team claim that the Gunung Padang existed as far back as 27,000 years ago, it would completely upend everything that is understood about the Paleolithic era, which was around 10,000 years ago.
Entering Gunung Padang, you'll find yourself on the terraces that form the top of the pyramid-like structure.
It would also mean that the Gunung Padang is older than Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, which is a Neolithic site dotted with carved stones from around 11,000 years ago. The study by David Hillman concluded that the builders of the Gunung Padang pyramid must have possessed remarkable masonry capabilities, which do not align with the traditional hunter-gatherer cultures. According to the study, the burial of these structures around 9,000 years ago adds further intrigue for reasons not fully understood. And this wouldn't be the first time a major scientific discovery from the hunter-gatherer era is being refuted. Sometime in 2023, scientists went over old findings with new technology and found something interesting. The common knowledge from that era is that males did the hunting while the females stayed home and looked after children, which has formed a major part of modern society. But after getting new protein DNA from 2 skeletons that had been concluded were men, they found out that it was in fact 2 women who had been buried together with their hunting tools, and it seemed like they were lovers. What this new finding meant was that most of what we knew about the hunter-gatherer era was rooted in bias. So, with the new conclusion by David Hillman on the Gunung Padang, could it be that everything about the Ice Age was untrue? Were humans more sophisticated than scientists think? Refuting David Hillman. After seeing David Hillman's study on the Gunung Padang, different archaeologists came forward to refute his claim. Flint Dibble, an archaeologist at the UK's Cardiff University, said he was surprised that Hillman's paper was even published at all. One of the major things that Dibble contested in Hillman's paper was the claim that stones at the Gunung Padang were handcrafted meticulously, indicating that humans were involved in the building process. According to the study, the layers were constructed at different stages, with each subsequent one featuring regularly cut columnar rocks arranged like bricks in a building. However, Dibble thinks that is not the case. He questioned the paper's implication that the structure was built using sophisticated construction techniques, claiming that the layers at the site could have well been the result of the natural movement of rocks or weathering. Dibble claimed that material rolling down a hill would, on average, orient itself. In essence, he was saying that the columnar joints at the Gunung Padang got there through natural causes, like rolling down there on their own. Another archaeologist, Bill Farley of the Southern Connecticut State University, also pointed out that there is no evidence that suggests that Gunung Padang was settled by an advanced civilization during the last ice age. Soil samples from the site could be dated back 27,000 years ago, but they don't contain traces of human activity such as bone fragments. Another major reason the paper by David Hillman has been under a lot of scrutiny is because it was proofread by Graham Hancock. The British writer is known for peddling unsubstantiated pseudo-scientific theories regarding ancient civilizations, so he may have overlooked key facts just to prove a point. Archaeological Prospection has decided to look further into the paper published by David Hillman, Natawijaja, and the geologist has welcomed the investigation.
And get into the controversy surrounding Hillman's paper and the response to it from the archaeological establishment.
Claiming that we know very little about human history, and he may not be far from the truth. The thing with science is that it exists to be disproven, which makes it an interesting field. But aside from the validity, there are more things that the scientific community is refuting in David Hillman's study about the Gunung Padang. So what exactly does the community have against his study, and what are their alternative answers? Age of the pyramid. The first thing the scientific community has against Hillman's conclusion is the age of the pyramid. The technique used to measure the age of organic materials is called C14, which involves analyzing their remaining radioactive carbon-14. This method was used to estimate the age of pyramid formation, but its effectiveness hinges on several factors. For example, older samples and environmental contamination can significantly skew the results. When doing archaeological research, it is important to employ meticulous sampling. The sample being used should be directly associated with the artifact and be free from contamination. But this is where concerns arose regarding the process David Hillman used for his research at Gunung Padang. Instead of directly dating artifacts, Hillman and his team used disturbed drill samples from rock and soil in the research, potentially compromising the accuracy of the age estimates. The soil samples used were also from geological traces and not anthropogenic traces, which meant it was definitely going to be a different set of results that would emerge. The formation of the pyramid. The second thing the scientific community is debating is Hillman's conclusion on the formation of the pyramids. Hillman claims that the site is 27,000 years old and is human-constructed. He points to the apparent disparity between the artifacts scattered on the surface and the buried bedrock as evidence. However, skeptics in the community are contesting that opinion and offering a different explanation. They highlight the natural phenomenon of columnar joints and elongated rock structures as being very common in volcanic and magmatic environments. The Metal Ages had not begun 27,000 years ago, and it is unclear what tools could have been used to cut the rocks to form a pyramid. To further prove their point and debunk Hillman's claims, skeptics have done a meticulous geological analysis to reveal that the surface rocks share the same type and composition as the buried bedrock.
The exteriors and interiors of the terraces are adorned with alignments of rock walls and rows of standing columnar rocks.
This new evidence suggests that the rocks at the Gunung Padang were formed through a natural process where the exposed rocks underwent crystallization from the same magma source. Based on this argument presented by the skeptics, it would suggest that the Gunung Padang is a remnant of an ancient volcano, or it is a naturally formed hill, and not a testament to a lost prehistoric civilization. The the discovery of ancient binding materials. The third thing about the scientific community is David's claim that he found ancient binding materials that held the stones together. He interpreted the material as ancient cement and used it to support his claim that the pyramid was constructed by humans. However, researchers like Mr. Lutfi Yondri, an archaeologist from the Indonesian National Research and Innovation Agency, argued that the material is not cement, but rather a result of chemical weathering. Chemical weathering involves the interaction of rock with mineral solutions to change the composition of the rocks. Yondri has been studying Gunung Padang for decades, and based on his knowledge of the area, he argues that the presence of small fragments between the stones is simply a result of the natural breakdown of the rock. Some other skeptics also argue that type rocks at Gunung Padang, which is basalt andesite, is susceptible to spheroidal weathering. This type of weathering causes the rock to break down into small, spherical fragments, which may be misinterpreted as binding material according to skeptics. The existence of subsurface chambers. The fourth and final point by David Hillman that the community has refuted is his argument that there are subsurface voids that have been claimed to be chambers of the pyramid in Gunung Padang. However, some skeptics argue that the voids are simply part of an ancient magmatic system, which is a common geological occurrence. The Gunung Padang research team has concluded that the subsurface voids, identified through geophysical analysis, are part of the pyramid's chambers. Based on some experts' opinions, the high porosity voids in the environment will be detected as low resistivity values by resistivity instruments. The irregular thickness and geometry also indirectly show that these cavities could just be gas-trapped during magma cooling and are not chambers created by humans. There are so many opposing points to David Hillman's research, which shows how limited our knowledge of the past is in comparison to the truth. But this won't be the first time that our perception of history will be questioned. Some years ago, it was discovered that the oldest cave painting in the world, called the Maros cave paintings, date as far back as 45,000 years ago.
Handprints and drawings that are between 35,000 and 40,000 years old at a minimum. They could be even older.
Based on what we know, humans should not have been able to create paintings around that time, but evidence proved that we thought wrong. Also, considering the major information about the hunter-gatherer era was proven to be incorrect, why can't the origin of the Gunung Padang also be contested? Maybe another key factor in why researchers are contesting new information on the Gunung Padang is because of the people it is coming from. One of such person is Graham Hancock, who released a docu-series titled Ancient Apocalypse, and his theory about the Gunung Padang was, well, Graham Hancock's view on the Gunung Padang. In Graham Hancock's docu-series, he argued that Gunung Padang is not just man-made, but is one of the first megalithic structures in Indonesia, dating as far back as 20,000 years ago. Contrary to the finding by the Indonesian Archaeology Bureau that claims that the site was developed around 45 BCE to 20 CE, Hancock stood by his opinion that the site has existed long before that. He also went on to bring Daniel Hillman to corroborate his point. As we have discussed for most of this video, Daniel Hillman has been making a point that the Gunung Padang has been around since 27,000 years ago, and it was created by human beings and not natural causes.
The same wiring. So if we've been around for 300,000 plus years at least.
When he appeared in the docu-series, he repeated these points and stood by Graham Hancock's opinion. Hancock was also going off on a tangent and making connections to archaeological findings from years ago as if they meant nothing within the context that they were made. But in all this, the most outrageous thing he said was that Gunung Padang was made by an ancient civilization that was wiped out by a meteor strike. He claimed that those people taught the Indonesians everything they needed to know about building the Gunung Padang, which was odd. Centuries have passed since the discovery of the Gunung Padang, and assuming it was truly man-made, Indonesian artists have replicated more megalithic sculptures and stone temples. The artistic gift of building structures with stone has lived with the Indonesians for generations, so it was preposterous for Graham Hancock to claim that it was an ancient civilization that taught them everything they knew. Although he didn't state it explicitly in this docuseries, this idea was inherently racist. Based on Hancock's old works, he has always argued prehistoric findings and claimed that they were passed down by Caucasian men to the indigenous people of whatever area the findings are located. In his 1995 work, Fingerprints of the Gods, he attributes the monuments built by the Inca people of South America to white, bearded men. In so doing, he is wiping out the history and whatever sentiment the people of the area have towards their monuments. Graham Hancock claims to be anti-academia, but he seems to dabble into racist ideas. Also, to think that David Hillman would join him in the fight against the history of his people may suggest that he is not an unbiased scientist. While science needs to be contested, it always needs to come from an objective space, or else we would have so many issues of wrong ideology spreading because of people's biases being added to science. After David Hillman published his paper on the Gunung Padang, it caught the attention of the Indonesian president, who then set up a task force to disprove his point. But instead of trying to get to the truth through an unbiased lens, Hillman and Hancock started to theorize that the Indonesian government was against them and leaning towards academia. Hillman then whipped out his drilling equipment and sent a flawed sample through a dating machine to prove that the Gunung Padang had indeed been standing for 27,000 years. The report published by David Hillman suggests different dates for the existence of the Gunung Padang, making his research seem rushed and shaky. After the real archaeologists stepped in and did more research, Hillman and his team stepped in with their equipment and dug further to reveal something that had been missed. A tunnel is discovered,
showing a geometric progression of technology leading up to the ability to build.
Deep beneath the surface, around the same level of the oldest soil core, 3 massive chambers connected by a slender tunnel are discovered. This discovery could mean one of 2 things. The first being that the Gunung Padang was indeed man-made, and the tunnel was built to easily transport things. But what can really be transported comfortably through a slender tunnel? So the second option could be that the tunnel was formed through weathering and had nothing to do with human interference. No matter what it meant, the appearance of a tunnel somehow proved Hancock and Hillman's point that the Gunung Padang was built by ancient Indonesians, as it is a vast pyramid with interlocking passageways, just like the Pyramid of Giza. But it would mean that Hancock was right about the fact that the ancient Indonesian was taught how to build complex structures by an ancient, now extinct, hyper-intelligent folk. However, running with this idea would mean that it is okay to run with the idea that the Egyptian pyramids were built by aliens. So, in all this, it turns out that there is a flaw in the research done by Hancock and Hillman. The flaw. To understand where the flaw came in, we have to do a breakdown of how remote sensing works, which was the process done by Hillman to make his conclusion. Just like radiocarbon dating, there are many factors that influence geophysical investigation, as earlier stated in this video. Anomalies in the density of the soil and its water content can throw off sensing methods like resistivity. Resistivity is the process where an electrical current is passed through the ground, and the resistance encountered by this current is then used to map out potential features. Some other sensing methods that can be thrown off by anomalies include underground rock formations and caves. Differing soil conditions can create a plethora of unusual results when using ground-penetrating radar, and that is where the issue with Hillman's research started. When anomalies are experienced during geophysics, they cannot be properly identified except through excavation. But Hillman only did the geophysics aspect with no excavation, which further went on to show that there were problems with his theory. It is impossible to determine the presence of underground tunnels and man-made chambers just by using ground-penetrating radar, and unless archaeologists do a proper excavation, the study won't be taken seriously. With all of these opposing opinions, what exactly is the truth? The truth about the Gunung Padang. If we are to go based on archaeologists' study on the Gunung Padang, the site was created around 4,000 years ago by natural causes. Indonesian mythologies suggest that it was created by mythical creatures, but that is a story that would only interest tourists. They continue to maintain their relationship with the site through these stories, while science suggests otherwise. The truth of the Gunung Padang is that the stones were created through volcanic eruptions, and over time, their positions have been changed by humans to maintain the original structure. We have come to the end of this video. Do you know of any other megalithic structures around the world? Let us know in the comments section. Ensure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel to gain more knowledge.